When a billionaire spots a woman begging with twin babies in the rain, a chance act of compassion sets off a chain of revelations that shatters everything he thought he knew. But as love is rediscovered, jealousy brews dangerously close, and the lives of two innocent children hang in the balance. What do you do when the family you never knew you had is the one thing you can't afford to lose? Sit back and find out. The rain was falling heavily that morning in Lagos. Grey clouds covered the sky like a heavy blanket, and water poured down from the heavens without mercy. Cars moved slowly through the flooded streets. Pedestrians rushed along holding bags over their heads trying to stay dry. It was one of those mornings when the whole city seemed tired. On the side of a busy road, near a row of old shops, a woman stood barefoot in the rain. Her clothes were soaked and stuck to her skin. In her arms she held two babies, a boy and a girl, both wrapped in a thin piece of cloth that was already too wet to be warm. The babies shivered quietly, too cold to even cry. Their small bodies pressed tightly against her chest as she tried to shield them from the rain. Her name was Elena. She was just 25 years old, but life had left its mark on her. Her eyes were tired, her face looked older than her age, and her movements were careful, like someone who had been through too much, too soon. She looked worn out, like someone who hadn't slept properly in days. Her back leaned slightly against the wall behind her, but her arms never stopped moving. She rocked the babies gently, whispering to them through trembling lips, "Just hold on. We'll be okay." She stretched out one hand from time to time, hoping someone would stop, hoping someone would care. But most people just passed by. Some gave her quick, pitying looks. Others didn't look at all. From across the road inside a black SUV, a man sat quietly in the back seat. His name was Desmond Nwosu. At just 32 years old, he was already a well-known billionaire. Sharp, private, powerful. He had left a meeting earlier than expected. Something about the investor's attitude had annoyed him, and he wasn't in the mood to pretend. Now he was just heading home, hoping to get some rest. But something outside the window made him sit up straight. He blinked. Through the fogged glass and falling rain, he saw her, a young woman. She wasn't just standing there. It looked like she was begging. Her face, it tugged at something inside him, something distant, familiar. He leaned closer to the window. As the SUV rolled forward slowly in the traffic, he got a better look at her. Wet hair clinging to her face, bare feet on the cold pavement, two babies in her arms. And suddenly, it hit him. "Stop the car," Desmond said sharply. The driver glanced at him through the mirror. "Sir, I said stop." The SUV came to a slow halt by the roadside. Desmond didn't speak for a moment. He just stared at her through the glass. He was sure he wasn't mistaken. It was her, Elena, the shy cook from his mansion. She had disappeared without a word 2 years ago. Back then he hadn't thought much of it. Staff came and went all the time. But now, seeing her here like this, something inside his chest tightened. He couldn't tell if he was imagining it, but a memory, faint and incomplete, surfaced. A night long ago. Soft light, the smell of flowers, a whisper, a kiss. No, he wasn't sure. It was all blurry, but his heart told him something had happened. He pushed the door open and stepped into the rain. The rain soaked through Desmond's suit almost immediately, but he didn't care. He shut the car door behind him and walked across the wet street, eyes fixed on the young woman holding the two babies. Traffic moved slowly around him. Water splashed his shoes. Still, he didn't stop. He moved closer, step by step. And then, he was standing right in front of her. "Elena?" he asked softly. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, time felt like it paused. Yes, she recognized him immediately. The man she once worked for. The man who, 2 years ago, had entered her world for one brief, confusing night and then disappeared like a dream. But she said nothing. Her arms tightened around the babies, her lips pressed together. Her eyes stayed calm, unreadable. Desmond studied her face. Up close, she looked even more tired than he'd realized. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her lips trembled slightly from the cold. But she didn't beg. She didn't flinch. She just stood there like stone. "What are you doing out here?" Desmond asked gently, "with such little babies?" His voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't proud. Just confused, concerned. But Eleanor's back straightened instantly. "I don't need your pity," she said quickly, eyes flashing for the first time. "I didn't ask you for anything." Desmond was taken aback. "That's not what I meant." One of the babies let out a sharp, dry cough. The sound was rough and weak, like her small chest was struggling to breathe. Desmond's eyes moved from Elena to the babies. He took a breath. "Let me help," he said quietly. "No," Elena said almost automatically. But she looked down at her daughter, who coughed again, then at her son, whose lips were turning pale from the cold. She hesitated. Desmond didn't move. He just stood there, rain dripping down his face, waiting. After a long pause, Elena finally gave the slightest nod. "Just for the babies," she whispered. "Not me." Desmond nodded. Understood. He signaled to the driver, who jumped out and opened the back door of the SUV. Desmond quickly grabbed 2 soft towels from the seat, clean, warm, fresh, and gently held one out to Elena. She looked at it, then slowly shifted the baby girl into it, wrapping her carefully. Desmond helped her secure the other towel around the boy. She didn't look at him. Her fingers were shaking, but steady when they touched the children. They stepped into the SUV, the warmth inside wrapped around them like a blanket. Elena sat stiffly, still clutching the babies close. Desmond gave the driver one simple instruction. "Take us to Rosewood Private Hospital. Now." The car pulled off, gliding through the puddled street, leaving behind the cold rain and a part of the past that had suddenly come rushing back. The soft hum of air conditioning greeted them as they stepped into the bright, quiet halls of Rosewood Private Hospital. The rain still poured outside, but here everything felt calm and distant. Too clean, too quiet, almost like another world entirely. Desmond led the way, holding the door open as Elena stepped in slowly, clutching the babies tightly. Her clothes were still wet. Her feet made soft sounds on the tiled floor. She didn't speak. She didn't ask where they were. She just walked. A man in a white coat came down the corridor toward them. A tall, confident figure with a kind face and a stethoscope around his neck. "Desmond?" he said, surprised. "What are you doing here? Miss me?" the doctor asked with a familiar grin. Desmond gave a small nod. "Gabriel, I need your help." Dr. Gabriel Bassi, Desmond's longtime friend and a highly respected pediatrician, looked from Desmond to Elena and then to the tiny bundles in her arms. "They need attention," Desmond added, "personally." Gabriel's expression changed immediately, serious, focused. "Of course. Come with me." He guided them into a private examination room. Elena sat on a padded bench near the corner while the nurses gently lifted the babies and laid them on 2 separate beds under warm lamps. Gabriel moved between them quickly, checking temperatures, listening to their chests, speaking calmly to the nurses. Desmond stood at a distance, arms crossed, watching everything closely. Elena said nothing. She sat still, wet hair clinging to her face, hands clenched together in her lap. She didn't look at Desmond. She didn't even glance at the babies anymore, not because she didn't care, but because she was afraid if she looked too long, she'd break down. Her mind was racing. Of all the people in Lago, of all the streets to be standing on, why did it have to be him? She had imagined seeing him again, maybe once or twice in the past, but not like this. Not with her feet bare and her babies wrapped in towels she couldn't afford. Not when her entire life was held together by thin hope and tired arms. Not when she was this vulnerable. Not when she still hadn't healed. Desmond took a cautious step toward her. "Eleanor," he said gently, "are you okay?" She didn't answer. "I didn't mean to offend you earlier," he continued. I was surprised. I never thought I'd see you again. Not like that." Still, she said nothing. He waited. The silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. "Elena," he tried again, softer this time. "You worked in our house for a long time, I remember you, but why are you acting like I've wronged you? Did something happen?" Her eyes finally turned to him, slowly, tiredly, and for a moment he thought she might cry. But she didn't. Instead, her voice came low and bitter. "You don't even remember me, do you?" Desmond froze. Of course I remember you," he said carefully. "Like I said earlier, you worked in the mansion before and you were with us for more than 3 years. You handled the kitchen. You lived in the boys' quarters. You were always respectful, always quiet." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "So that's all it was? Employee and employer?" Desmond blinked, confused. I don't understand." She looked away, her arms crossing tightly over her chest like she was holding something in. Desmond stood there, speechless. A new question formed in his mind. Had something happened? Something more than just work? Was that why she was here now, with babies and bitterness in her eyes? He swallowed hard, suddenly unsure of everything he thought he knew. Time passed slowly that afternoon, and Desmond sat quietly beside the hospital bed, his mind a storm of questions. Elena hadn't said anything more since her last words. She sat near the window, arms folded tightly across her chest, watching the rain slide down the glass. Her silence felt like a wall between them, a wall he didn't know how to climb. The babies lay peacefully in 2 small cribs beside her, wrapped in warm blankets now, their breathing steady. The little girl still coughed lightly, but she no longer looked as weak as before. The boy slept deeply, one tiny hand curled near his cheek. Desmond turned to look at Elena again. Her face was calm, but her eyes were far away. He took a slow breath. "Elena," he said quietly, "did something happen between us?" Her eyes flicked to his, but she said nothing. He waited. Still nothing. He ran a hand over his face, trying to piece together the scattered memories in his head. A flicker of soft light, the scent of night flowers, her voice in the dark. He had been broken, numb, drunk, angry at the world. The house had been quiet after the visitors left. Everyone else had gone to sleep. He remembered walking outside, sitting near the garden. A quiet figure approaches. A conversation. And then nothing clear. Just heat. Movement. The echo of something he couldn't quite name. "Elena," he said again, more gently this time. "If I did something to hurt you, I swear I didn't mean to." Her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "I never meant for it to happen," she said quietly, eyes still fixed on the window. "You were grieving. I came to check if you needed anything. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it." She swallowed, her voice low. "I gave you something that night I had never given anyone." Desmond blinked. She looked at him for a second, her eyes shimmering but steady. "And then you disappeared. Like nothing happened." He sat back slowly, guilt spreading through him like cold water. Before he could say more, the door opened. Dr. Gabriel walked in holding a white envelope in his hand. His face was unreadable. Desmond stood immediately. "How are they?" Gabriel smiled slightly. "They'll be fine. A bit underweight. The girl has a mild chest infection, but nothing we can't treat." He walked over to the side. "I also ran that other test you asked for. The results will be ready soon." Then he left. About 30 minutes later, Dr. Gabriel returned, the test results in his hand. He found Desmond standing alone, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, deep in thought. "Des," Gabriel said quietly. Desmond looked up. Gabriel glanced back toward the examination room, then stepped closer and handed him the envelope. "I think you're going to want to see this for yourself." Desmond opened it slowly, even though a part of him already knew. "Are they mine?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel gave a small nod. "It's a 100% match. They're yours." Desmond didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the paper in silence. His heart pounded in his chest. 100 thoughts rushed through his head at once, but none of them came out clearly. 2 babies. His babies. A woman he hadn't thought of in 2 years was now the mother of his children. He had been a father all this time, and hadn't known. He blinked back, the sting in his eyes. I need to talk to her, he said quietly. Gabriel nodded and left him alone. Desmond walked slowly back into the room. Elena was still sitting by the window, gently rocking the baby girl. The boy was now lying in a small crib beside her, yawning softly. Everything in the room felt still. But inside Desmond, everything was spinning. "Elena," he began, voice low. "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't look at him. He took a step closer. "When you found out you were pregnant, why didn't you reach out? Why did you just disappear?" She adjusted the baby girl in her arms and finally whispered, "I didn't want to disrupt your life. You had clearly moved on." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Desmond's face dropped. He didn't know what to say. He sat on the edge of a chair, resting his elbows on his knees, hands dangling. "I didn't remember what happened that night," he said quietly. "Not until I saw you again. Just flashes. I was grieving, I was drunk. But that's no excuse." Elena didn't reply. She just looked down at her child. Desmond sighed, overwhelmed by guilt. "I should have remembered. I should have found you." Still, she said nothing. But the silence between them said everything. The ride back to the mansion was quiet. Desmond drove with one eye on the road and the other on the rearview mirror, watching Elena cradle the twins. She didn't speak, but she wasn't cold either. She was just tired. Her body rocked with the slow rhythm of exhaustion, but her grip on the babies never loosened. The gates of the Norsu estate opened wide, revealing the grand mansion bathed in warm lights. Elena's eyes flickered with recognition. This place was once her world. She had lived in the boys' quarters for 3 years, and now she was back. But everything was different. Inside, the staff hurried in confusion, staring at the twins with wide eyes. "Bring warm towels and baby supplies," Desmond instructed. "Prepare the guest room upstairs." The staff moved quickly. A maid gently took the baby boy while another helped Elena out of the car. Within minutes, the twins were cleaned, fed, and swaddled in soft new blankets. Desmond brought Elena a clean change of clothes and stood at the doorway. "You can rest upstairs," he said softly. "Your room is ready." She nodded faintly, took the clothes, and followed the maid without a word. Desmond watched her disappear up the stairs with the twins, his twins. Something inside him shifted. Later that night, at dinner, everywhere was quiet. The clinking of cutlery echoed faintly in the wide dining room. Elena sat at one end, feeding the twins mashed potatoes in small portions. Desmond sat across the long table, barely touching his own plate. After a few more minutes of silence, he finally spoke. "I should let you know. I'm engaged." Elena didn't flinch. She nodded, eyes still on the children. "That's fine." Desmond leaned forward. "And I'm going to find a house for you and the twins. Somewhere safe, comfortable." She looked up at him, her face calm but firm. "Don't do this out of pity. I've lived long enough to know I can manage on my own too. Don't feel you have to." Desmond's voice dropped lower. "Not pity, just regret, and maybe hope." They didn't say anything more, but something hung in the air, unfinished, unspoken. Later that night, Desmond stood in his study and called his lawyer. "I want to begin custody paperwork," he said. "Joint custody. Make sure it's airtight. I want to be in my children's lives no matter what." Upstairs, Elena sat quietly in the guest room. The babies were already asleep, warm and full, lying on the softest beds she'd ever seen them in. She looked around. The walls were familiar. The scent of the hallway, the paintings, even the creak in the floorboard by the door. She had cleaned them once, walked these halls with a tray in her hand. It felt strange to be back, not as a staff, not as the girl who served tea and swept staircases. Just Elena, a mother, a woman with nowhere to go, sitting in the house of a man she once gave everything to. Only 25, yet her body felt older. Her eyes had seen things girls her age shouldn't see. She had lived through months of hunger, days of walking the streets barefoot, nights sleeping beneath makeshift shelters. When she found out she was pregnant, she had tried everything,
house cleaning, washing clothes, even hawking snacks in the rain. But Lagos was cruel to the poor, especially a pregnant orphan with no certificate, no family, no help. So yes, she had thought about contacting Desmond many times. But what would she say? "Hi, I'm the girl who cooked your meals and I'm pregnant with your child." It felt ridiculous. And there was that woman. She had warned her clearly not to try it. Besides, she had seen his life on the news, his business thriving, his face on magazine covers. He was engaged, happy. His world was perfect. Why disrupt that? So she had stayed away. All she wanted now was for her babies to have a roof over their heads, food, warmth, a chance. If Desmond wanted to help, fine, but she wouldn't ask, and she wouldn't stay longer than necessary. Her heart had already taken enough damage. Downstairs, Desmond stood by the window in his room, sipping water slowly. His mind wandered to old memories. Elena, the quiet girl who hardly spoke, but always bowed politely whenever she served him. The girl who once forgot her shoes in the kitchen and ran barefoot to get them. He had teased her that day. She'd blushed so hard she knocked over a tray. He used to bring small souvenirs for the staff whenever he traveled. But for some reason, he always got something special for her. A bracelet, a book, once even a scarf from Morocco. Maybe he always liked her. Maybe that's why that night happened. The night of his father's funeral. He had been broken, drowning in grief, and she had stayed by the hallway offering him tea. He remembered her soft eyes, her silence. That night, something happened, something real. But when she disappeared the next morning, he didn't think much of it. Staff left all the time. People came and went. And he had forgotten the most important part. Now he hated that part of himself, the forgetfulness, the carelessness. He had failed her, and the twins, and now things were complicated, so very complicated. The next morning, the air in the mansion felt heavier. Desmond had barely slept. He sat in his home office staring at his phone for a long while before finally sending the message. He couldn't avoid it forever. Vanessa deserved to know. He typed, "Hey, can you come by the house today? There's something we need to talk about." Her reply came fast. "Of course, babe, I'm on my way." Vanessa Williams arrived just after noon in a sleek wine-colored SUV, stepping out in heels that clicked sharply against the driveway. Tall, elegant, and always camera-ready, Vanessa carried herself like she was born for high society, because she was. The only daughter of a prominent oil magnate, her family had been close to the Nwosus for years. Desmond had known her since they were children. Their paths had always crossed at family parties, fundraisers, and weddings, but they had only started dating 8 months ago, more from social expectation than passion. When his mother, Madame Ruth, insisted he propose, he eventually did 2 months ago. Madame Ruth was currently abroad, staying with Desmond's sister, Adaora, who had just given birth to her second child. She had missed the proposal, but made it clear she expected Vanessa to be the next Mrs. Nwosu. Desmond met Vanessa at the door. She gave him a bright smile and leaned in to kiss his cheek. "You look tired," she teased lightly, walking in like the mansion already belonged to her. "Is everything okay?" "There's something you should know," Desmond began, voice cautious. "There's someone staying here temporarily." Vanessa arched an eyebrow. "Who?" He hesitated, then gestured toward the sitting room. Elena stood quietly beside the couch, her posture calm, one of the twins, Emanuela, resting lightly against her shoulder. "Elena," Desmond said, "this is Vanessa. Vanessa, this is Elena. And these are the twins." Vanessa's eyes narrowed just slightly before her lips stretched into a controlled smile. "Oh, how sweet," she said, her tone syrupy and sharp at the same time. "Twins. Adorable." Elena gave a small nod. "Nice to meet you." Desmond cleared his throat. "They are my kids, and it happened long before we started dating. I just found out about them, and I wanted you to know. Elena will be here for a little while, just until I make proper arrangements. I'm working with my lawyer on joint custody." Vanessa's hand tightened around her designer handbag. "Of course," she said, voice light. "Very noble of you." But behind her perfect smile, her mind was already spinning. She hadn't even gotten Desmond to kiss her properly since their engagement,
and this woman shows up with his children. His children? She had spent months trying to win his heart, impress his mother, prepare for their perfect society wedding, and now this quiet, modest girl appears with babies in her arms, and Desmond suddenly looks more alive than he ever did with her. She hated it, but she didn't show it. Instead, she laughed softly. "Well, I hope you're comfortable, Eleanor. And of course, if you need anything, let the staff know." Eleanor nodded, but she could feel the ice behind the words. Vanessa turned to Desmond, her tone sweeter now. "Darling, may I speak to you privately?" He nodded and followed her down the hallway. As soon as they were out of earshot, Vanessa's smile dropped. "So what now?" she said coldly. "Playing house with a little pauper?" Desmond's jaw tightened. "She's the mother of my children." "Oh, so now she's family," Vanessa snapped, crossing her arms. "How convenient." "I'm not doing this to hurt you," he said quietly. "I just need time to figure things out." Vanessa said nothing, but in her heart the seeds of a plan were already forming. She had come too far to lose now. If Elena thought she could walk in and steal her future, she had another thing coming. The days that followed moved quietly, but steadily. Desmond found himself waking earlier than usual, not to answer calls or review deals, but to check on the twins. Mornings began with soft baby laughter and tiny hands grabbing his fingers. He would sit on the floor of the nursery, letting them crawl across his chest, babbling nonsense and giggling at his puzzled expressions. He was learning how to hold them, how to calm them when they cried, how to feed them and read their different needs. It overwhelmed him sometimes, but it also warmed him in ways he hadn't expected. He had missed 11 months. He didn't want to miss another second. Elena, as always, stayed out of the way. She rose early, bathed and dressed the babies herself, prepared their bottles, and mostly remained in the guest wing. She didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, her words were brief and polite. But Desmond noticed the way her hands moved gently when rocking the twins, the way she whispered lullabies at night, the way she always fed herself last. There was a quiet strength about her, a kind of grace that made him pause when she entered the room, even if she didn't notice. He hadn't seen it before, not fully, but now, every day, it pulled at him. And Vanessa noticed. She stood in the hallway one afternoon, watching from behind the open study door as Desmond sat cross-legged on the floor, letting the baby boy tug at his shirt buttons while the girl gnawed happily on a teething toy in his lap. Elena sat nearby, smiling faintly. Desmond laughed, an easy, open sound Vanessa hadn't heard in months. Her stomach turned. She turned away before they noticed her. Later that evening, while Desmond was in his study alone, looking for an old folder, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk and paused. Buried beneath documents and papers was something small and delicate, a thin silver necklace with a blue stone pendant. He picked it up slowly. His breath caught. The necklace. He had bought it during a business trip to the US 4 years ago. He remembered clearly. He had returned home and given it to one of the kitchen staff. Elena. She had been too shy to accept it at first, saying it was too much. But he'd insisted, said it was just a thank you for always making his tea just right. She had blushed and taken it. She wore it that night. The night he was grieving. The night Desmond sat back slowly in his chair, staring at the pendant. Everything came rushing back now. He remembered how passionate the night had been, how he had forgotten anything protection, and how all he wanted was to be with her. But why was the necklace in his drawer? Had she left it behind? Or had someone taken it? His mind started turning. Something about her disappearance never sat right. She had worked there for 3 years. Quiet. Loyal. Then she was just... without a word. After they had been together, was she that scared of him? Was she that shy? Or maybe, because someone had interfered. He clenched the necklace in his hand. Should he confront her? Ask why she left it behind? But what was the point? She hadn't said anything, even now. Maybe she didn't want to remember either.
He was already engaged. Digging up the past wouldn't change the present. So he let it slide. He returned the necklace to the drawer, but not as carelessly this time. He closed it gently and sat still for a long while. Meanwhile, Vanessa's smile became sharper by the day. She played her role well, greeting the twins with mock affection, occasionally dropping off toys or asking the maids if Elena needed anything. But her eyes, they were always watching. Watching how Desmond's hands lingered a second longer on Elena's shoulder when handing her a bottle. Watching how his face softened when the twins giggled in her lap. Watching how Elena's voice seemed to calm him in ways hers never did. The spark between them was too quiet to be called a flame, but Vanessa saw it, and it burned her. One evening, she cornered Desmond in the hallway just outside the nursery, her arms crossed, face tight behind her powdered elegance. "So, when exactly are they moving out?" she asked casually. Desmond looked up from the baby bottle he was holding. "Soon," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Vanessa arched an eyebrow. "You said that last week." "I just need a bit more time," he said gently. "The twins are adjusting. I want to make sure everything's stable." She smiled tightly. "Of course. So generous of you." But inside, she was screaming. It wasn't just about Elena. It was the way Desmond held the twins, the way he looked at them like he'd known them forever. The way he spoke softer around Elena, the way he barely touched her now. He hadn't in weeks. She had worked too hard to lose everything to a lowlife from the boys' quarters and her two rain-soaked babies. She needed to act, and fast. That night, in the privacy of her car, Vanessa pulled out her second phone. A number she hadn't dialed in years was still saved. She hesitated, then tapped it. It rang once, twice. Then a voice picked up, smooth, smug, dangerous. "Well, well, well, Vanessa. To what do I owe this call, my lady?" "Don't be dramatic, Victor," she said flatly. "I just realized we both want the same thing, power, position." Vanessa had contacted none other than Victor Norsu, Desmond's disgraced stepbrother, the black sheep of the family. He had gambled away his inheritance, clashed with their late father at every turn. The day the old man died of a heart attack, it had been during a screaming match with Victor. After that, Desmond had cut him off completely. No access to the company, no seat at the board, no voice in the family estate. He had been bitter ever since. And now, Vanessa had something he wanted, a shot at revenge. "What do you want, princess?" he asked smoothly. "Desmond brought in 2 babies from the street. I want those babies out of the picture," she said coldly. "Once they're gone, Desmond will have no reason to hold on to her. I'll be the only future he has left, for his name, his legacy, everything." Victor laughed. "You're more wicked than I remember. Are you in, or not?" He didn't hesitate. "I'm in, but when this is over, I want my seat at the table back." "Fine, just handle it." She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. For a moment she stared at her own reflection in the mirror, composed, beautiful, untouchable. Then she smiled. Let Eleanor hold Desmond's heart for now. She wouldn't hold it for long. 3 days later, it was raining heavily that night. Not the soft, drizzling kind, but a loud, angry storm. Thunder rolled above the mansion, rattling the windows as wind swept through the tall trees outside. Elena had just finished feeding the twins and rocking them to sleep. They looked peaceful. Emmanuel curled against the pillow, Emanuela's little thumb resting in her mouth. Desmond had stepped out briefly for a business call, and the house felt too quiet. A soft knock came at the door. Vanessa stepped in with a warm smile and a tray in hand. On it, a cup of tea and a slice of bread. "I thought you might need something to calm your nerves," she said gently. "You've had a lot to deal with these past few days." Elena hesitated, but Vanessa's voice was calm and kind. It surprised her. "I'm not here to make things harder," Vanessa continued, setting the tray on the table. "I just want to say, I understand. You didn't ask for any of this, and I'm not trying to push you out. I'll make sure Desmond does what's right for you and the twins." Elena's expression softened. For a moment, something like relief crossed her face. "Thank you,"
she said quietly. Really, I never meant to cause any problems. I plan to leave soon. I just want my children to be safe. I don't intend to get in the way. Vanessa reached over and touched her arm lightly. You have my word. Elena gave a small smile and picked up the cup. That means a lot. She took a sip. It was warm, sweet, calming. Her eyelids grew heavy almost instantly. She barely reached the chair before her body collapsed into it. Her hand fell limp, the teacup shattering on the ground as her vision blurred into black. The masked men came at midnight. 2 of them, gloved, silent, fast. They crept into the nursery, picked up the twins with practiced ease and disappeared out the back exit, where a waiting van sat running beneath the dark trees. No one saw them, no one heard, except the storm. Elena jolted awake hours later, her body numb, her breath shallow. Her head pounded, the room spun. Something was wrong. The babies. She stumbled into the nursery, her heart in her throat. Empty. The cribs empty. No! She screamed. She fell to her knees, searching the floors, behind the rocking chair, under the bed, as if they might be hiding. Tears blurred her vision. Desmond! He rushed in moments later, phone still in his hand. What happened? What's wrong? They're gone, she cried. The twins. Someone took them. His face went pale. What do you mean they're gone? I don't know. I drank tea. I think I was too tired. I slept off. I woke up and they... She couldn't finish. Desmond darted into the nursery. He saw the empty cribs, the scattered blankets, the cold air left behind. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, already dialing security, shouting orders into the receiver. Lock down the house. Check every camera. Call the police. Elena collapsed into the hallway, shaking, sobbing, her hands clutching at nothing. Then, Desmond's phone rang. Unknown number. He froze. Elena, quiet, he whispered, answering slowly. Hello? A voice, rough, distorted, came through. If you want your babies back, don't even try to call the police. His heart stopped. Who is this? Where are my children? We'll be in touch. Don't do anything stupid. The line went dead. Desmond's hand fell to his side. He turned to Elena, whose eyes were wide with terror, tears running silently down her cheeks. His jaw clenched. Whoever took those children was going to regret it. He stood frozen in the hallway, his phone still clutched tightly in his hand. Rain pounded against the windows, echoing the storm inside his chest. Then it rang again. Same unknown number. He answered quickly. Where are my children? A familiar voice responded, twisted with bitterness. Well, look who finally ready to talk. Big brother Desmond. Desmond's eyes narrowed. Victor? Victor chuckled coldly. You sound surprised. I told you before you can't erase me. I warned you. What do you want? Oh, nothing much. Just everything. Transfer your controlling shares of Nuosu Enterprises into my name. Do that and you'll see your babies again. Refuse and, well, you'll be a grieving father. Desmond's hand clenched into a fist. You're sick. Those are babies. They have nothing to do with this. You have until tomorrow morning. I'll send the location. The call ended. But Desmond didn't panic. Not this time. He told Elena not to panic, then went into his study. Inside, he took a deep breath. He picked up his phone again and called his head of security. He explained everything quickly, then added, Tell the team to prepare, Desmond said coldly. He wants a meeting? I'll give him one. The warehouse was old, abandoned, and deep in the outskirts of Lagos, a place forgotten by most. Victor stood near the center, pacing. The twins were in a makeshift crib. One of them had begun crying, and he hissed in frustration. Vanessa's voice came through the phone, nervous. This wasn't what we planned, she muttered. We were just supposed to scare them, not... Plans change, Victor snapped, and so do fortunes. Once I get those shares, Desmond will be finished. Then he ended the call quickly. But outside the warehouse, the Nuosu private security team had already surrounded the perimeter. Armed, trained, silent. At Desmond's signal, they moved. Inside, Desmond appeared calmly through the side door, alone. Victor grinned. I knew you'd come. I want to see my children first, Desmond said coldly. Transfer the shares. I said I want to see them. Victor nodded toward the corner. Desmond's heart lurched when he saw them, bundled together, eyes wide with fear. That was all he needed. A tiny, near-silent tap sounded in his earpiece. Now. Suddenly chaos. Security officers stormed in from every direction. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Victor grabbed one of the twins in panic and bolted toward the back exit. No! Desmond roared, chasing after him. Victor nearly made it to the loading door, but Desmond tackled him hard, sending both men crashing to the ground. The baby cried out, but was safely caught by one of the guards. Victor kicked and cursed, but it was over. He was pinned, cuffed. Police swarmed in seconds later, securing the scene. Desmond stood, breathing hard, arms reaching immediately for his children. They were safe. He clutched them both, holding them tightly against his chest. Then the door burst open. Eleanor. She had insisted on following once she learned the location. She froze for a heartbeat when she saw Desmond with the twins. Then her knees buckled. He turned just in time to catch her in his arms. I thought I lost them, she wept, holding the babies, kissing their cheeks, her body trembling with relief. You'll never lose them again, Desmond whispered, his voice raw. I promise. Desmond didn't look back. His world, everything that mattered, was in his arms. The storm had passed. But the echo of it lingered in the air, wet streets, trembling breaths, and hearts still racing from what could have been lost forever. As the police van disappeared into the night with Victor in the back seat, Elena stood with Desmond near the warehouse entrance, both of them clutching the twins like they were the only thing left in the world that mattered. No words at first, just breathe. Just relief. Then, their eyes met. And for the first time, nothing else was between them. No confusion, no history, no guilt, no titles. Just two people. One scarred by silence, the other wrecked by memory. Elena's eyes shimmered with unspoken fear and love. Desmond's hand moved instinctively, gently brushing her soaked braid behind her ear. And for one still second, everything stilled. They didn't kiss. They didn't speak. But something passed between them, an invisible promise, a fragile realization. They didn't want to lose each other again. Later that night, they took the twins to the hospital for full checks. Gabriel was already waiting. Just to be sure, Desmond had said, I need peace of mind. While the babies were being examined, Desmond sat with Elena in the quiet hospital lounge. Then, without pressure or grand speeches, he brought out a folder. These are the legal documents, he said softly. I want to formally acknowledge Emmanuel and Emanuela as mine, fully, publicly. Elena stared at the papers, then at him. I also want to co-parent, or more, he added, his voice uncertain. If you'll let me. Her eyes welled. I just need time, she whispered. He nodded. No pressure. I'll wait, as long as it takes. A few days passed. The mansion was calm again, cleaned, restored, secure. But Desmond wasn't at peace. Something still didn't sit right. Victor had contacts, but someone on the inside had fed him details. How else would he have known when to strike? He asked his tech team to review internal footage and digital activity from the days before the kidnapping, and then it came. A message, a file, Vanessa's name, her number, text messages to an unknown contact, instructions, payment logs, a recorded call. He also saw her sneaking out of the mansion that night after she slipped something in Elena's drink. The evidence was clear and undeniable. Desmond stood in his office staring at the screen. Betrayal crackled in his ears. He confronted her that evening. Vanessa arrived, dressed in designer silk, pretending everything was fine. We need to talk, Desmond said, his voice low. He laid out the evidence. At first she laughed. Desmond, come on. You think I'd do that? Then she blamed Victor. Then she claimed she was tricked. Then she begged. But when he played the audio, her voice, arranging the tea, coordinating Victor, her face fell. Desmond's eyes were cold. You nearly cost me everything. My children. Their mother. I did it for us, she cried. You were slipping away, don't you see that? I was never yours to begin with, he said flatly. The police arrived moments later. Vanessa's powerful family tried to intervene, but Desmond made it clear she was done. Charges were filed. Her lawyers moved quickly, and within days she was out on bail. But Desmond didn't care. He released a public statement distancing himself from her. He revoked all company access, and he removed every trace of her from his home. Elena didn't ask for details, but when she saw the papers and the quiet way Desmond tucked them away, she knew. He had chosen. And this time, it wasn't out of guilt. It was out of love. The house was quiet again. Elena spent most of her time in the nursery, gently rocking the twins, humming soft lullabies that sounded like fragments of memory. Desmond came and went, balancing meetings and fatherhood with a new tenderness that surprised even him. Then one morning, a familiar black SUV pulled into the driveway. Madame Ruth Nwosu had returned. Desmond hadn't told her the full story, only that Vanessa had been arrested and the engagement called off. She had heard whispers, read headlines, and finally booked the next flight home. Elena was in the living room, bouncing Emanuela on her hip when Madame Ruth walked in. The older woman stopped. Her eyes landed on the babies, brown-skinned, round-eyed, familiar. Then on Elena. Her face drained of color. She stepped forward slowly, her voice trembling. "They are his." Desmond nodded from behind her. "Yes, Mum, they're mine and Eleanor's." Madame Ruth's purse slipped from her hand to the floor. For a long moment she said nothing. Her eyes filled with 100 emotions: shock, shame, disbelief, then something else. Guilt. She lowered herself onto the sofa, hands shaking. "I never thought I'd see you again," she whispered, staring at Elena. Elena stood frozen, silent, heart pounding in her ears. "I owe you the truth," Madame Ruth finally said, turning to Desmond. 2 years ago, I came home and saw her standing in your study. She had a letter." Elena blinked hard, her fingers tightening around her baby's tiny back. "I knew. Somehow I knew," the older woman went on. "I confronted her, told her to disappear, that you could never be with a poor girl from the boys' quarters, that she was nothing." Tears gathered in Elena's eyes. "I offered her money, but she refused. And when she said she was pregnant, I panicked. I threatened her. I told her to get rid of it, to disappear and never come back." Desmond's jaw clenched. "Mom, how could you?" "I thought she did," she whispered. "I thought the pregnancy was gone." She looked up at Elena, her face wet with silent tears. "I did it for our name, for our family's reputation. That's why I pushed for the engagement with Vanessa. She was of our world. She was safe. But I see now. I was blind." Elena lowered her eyes, tears falling freely now. "You destroyed me," she said quietly. "After that day I had nowhere to go. I lost my job, my home, all at once. I slept in kiosks, under bridges, I worked in food stalls while pregnant. I begged just to eat. My body nearly gave up during childbirth." Desmond covered his face with his hand, the pain in his chest unbearable. Madame Ruth reached for Eleanor's hand, hesitant. "I don't deserve forgiveness, I don't. But I am so sorry. I was proud, cruel, and wrong. If there is any room in your heart, please, forgive me." Elena didn't speak, but her tears told 1,000 stories. Desmond walked over, placing his hand gently on Elena's back. He didn't say anything either. He couldn't. There were no words big enough to contain the weight of that moment. Madame Ruth slowly stood. Her hands trembled as she picked up her purse. "I'll go," she said softly. "I just needed to say it. Take your time, both of you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please, for the sake of my grandchildren." She turned and left the mansion quietly, the front door closing behind her with a soft finality. The silence that followed was thick with memory, regret, and the beginning of something that felt a lot like healing. The echo of Madame Ruth's confession lingered in every corner of the room like a shadow that refused to leave. Elena stood by the window, staring out into the dim sky, arms wrapped protectively around herself. The twins were asleep upstairs. Desmond sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. Then, he broke. Tears spilled freely down his face as he stood and crossed the room. "Elena," he whispered, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." She didn't turn. He knelt beside her. "I should have remembered you. I should have looked for you. I should have known something was wrong when you vanished." Elena turned slowly, her eyes already wet. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly. "That morning, I found out I was pregnant. I waited for you in your study. I was scared, but I knew I had to do the right thing. And then your mother walked in." Her voice broke. She said things that cut deep, but they were true. We weren't in love. We weren't anything. Just a one-night mistake, right? So I left. I dropped the necklace you gave me. It felt wrong to keep anything that belonged to you. Desmond shook his head, pain in every line of his face. "I never contacted you," she continued, "because I didn't want your pity. Or worse, I didn't want you to think I was trying to trap you with the pregnancy." "Eleanor," Desmond whispered, reaching for her hand. "It wasn't a mistake. That night, it wasn't nothing." She looked away, her heart aching. He stood, cupping her face gently. "I love you. Not because of the twins. Not because I feel guilty. I love you because of who you are, because of the way you care, the way you fought through everything just to keep our children alive, because when I look at you, I feel like I've finally come home." Tears slipped down Elena's cheeks. "I don't want you to leave this house," he said, voice breaking. "I don't want you to leave me." She didn't speak. She simply leaned into his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her tightly. Weeks passed. The house healed slowly. So did Elena. Desmond gave her space, but never pulled away. He was there every day, feeding the twins, making her tea, asking nothing but offering everything. He didn't pressure her. He simply stayed. And one quiet evening, as the sun painted the garden in soft orange hues, Elena walked beside him while the twins giggled nearby on a picnic blanket. Desmond stopped walking. He turned to her, heart pounding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the same delicate necklace she had once left behind. Her breath caught. He dropped to one knee. "I'm not asking for perfection," he said quietly. "I'm asking for forever, with you, with them, with us. Will you marry me, Elena?" Tears spilled from her eyes. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Later that night, on the balcony with moonlight spilling across her face, Eleanor told him something she had never said before. "I admired you for a long time," she confessed. "Back when I was just the shy cook living in the boys' quarters. I used to hold the little gifts you gave me after your trip so close to my chest I couldn't sleep. Just knowing you noticed me. It meant everything." Desmond swallowed hard, his eyes misty. "That night, after your father's funeral, I didn't know if you even knew it was me when you kissed me. But I gave you my virginity. Not because I felt sorry for you, but because I had already loved you. From a distance, for a long time, actually. But I felt you would never look at me, the poor cook." He pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. "I remember now," he said. "And I'll never forget again." The soft rain had passed. The air smelled of earth and renewal. In the days that followed Elena's quiet confession on the balcony, the house began to feel different, warmer, safer. Love didn't arrive with loud declarations or grand gestures anymore. It grew gently, in shared laughter, morning feedings, long walks in the garden, and the unspoken understanding between two people who had survived each other's storms. One late morning, Madame Ruth returned to the mansion. She didn't come with fanfare, just a small overnight bag and a tired smile. Desmond welcomed her with a short nod. The tension between mother and son still lingered, though it had softened at the edges. But Eleanor stood waiting. When they faced each other in the living room, It was as though the past stood silently between them, asking to be acknowledged one last time. Madame Ruth looked older somehow, her usual confidence replaced by quiet remorse. "Elena," she said, voice uncertain, "I wasn't sure if you'd even let me through the door." Elena gave a soft sigh. "I did worse. I let you into my heart." Madame Ruth's lips quivered. "I was wrong," she said, stepping forward. "So wrong. I thought I was protecting my son. I thought I knew best. But I see now I was just trying to control him. And I nearly destroyed everything." She paused, tears welling. "I see the way he looks at you, the way you hold his heart without even trying. I see the peace in this house. I see the family." I almost broke. A tear slipped down Elena's cheek, but her voice was steady. "I forgive you." And in that moment, something broke and healed all at once. The two women, once divided by pride and pain, embraced tightly. No more apologies. No more fear. Just forgiveness. The wedding came quietly, then beautifully. A sunny afternoon in Lagos. Garden petals lined the aisle. The twins, now walking steadily, toddled in first, holding hands. Emanuela in a little white gown, Emmanuel in a matching suit with suspenders. Guests gasped, smiled, cried. Madame Ruth walked Desmond to the altar, her arm linked tightly through his, her face glowing with pride. Elena appeared moments later, radiant in soft ivory, her braided hair swept up and adorned with white roses. She walked alone, but not empty. With every step, her past followed gently behind her, not as baggage, but as proof she had survived. They exchanged vows in voices that trembled and cracked. Desmond said, "You showed me what love looks like when it refuses to give up." Elena whispered, "And you showed me what it means to be seen, to be chosen." When they kissed, it wasn't loud or showy. It was soft and slow, full of everything they'd been afraid to say. The crowd stood and clapped, and from the front row, Madame Ruth cried openly. That evening at the reception under a large white canopy, Desmond stood beside Eleanor once more as a new banner was revealed behind them. The Elena Hope Foundation, for abandoned mothers and children. The audience erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. Desmond took the microphone and looked into the crowd, then at his wife. "The woman I once overlooked in my own home," he said, voice steady and filled with emotion. "Gave me the family I never knew I needed." He reached for her hand. "She didn't ask for anything. She gave everything. This foundation is our promise to find and help the women who are fighting silent battles every day, and remind them they matter." The room rose to its feet. 1 year later. Laughter floated from the garden like music. Eleanor sat on the porch steps, a thick book in her hand. Her reading glasses slid slightly down her nose, and her college bag sat beside her. New books for her new semester. Desmond walked out with 2 cups of tea, setting one beside her before sitting close. They watched Emmanuel and Emanuela chase butterflies across the lawn, their tiny giggles filling the air. "Remember when I didn't even know they existed?" Desmond murmured. Elena smiled, her eyes soft. "Now they own you." He chuckled, gladly. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that only grows between people who have seen the worst in each other and stayed. Then Elena turned to him and whispered, "You know, if you love someone, don't wait for the rain." Desmond raised a brow. She smiled, eyes twinkling. "Find them now." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "I already did." And beneath the warm Lagos sun they sat side by side, their hearts full, their family whole, proof that even after the rain, love can bloom again.